So, welcome everyone. Here we are. Faith and I are going to be talking a little about what we're doing. If you don't know us, which I'm sure many of you do, I'm Ariel. Faith is our chair. I'm a reference librarian. And we have a big old project coming up for our books in the library. And you can be, we hope, we really want involvement from everyone else as well. So we want you to talk as well, though. We don't just want to talk. We want feedback and input and thinking. So here's a scenario that I want us to think through and just hear how you do this already, if you do. So you are a professor updating your Canvas shell to meet revised CSLOs. You want your students to have the materials they need to conduct sound research. How do you ensure access to research materials? This is not like a right or wrong. This is literally just we want to hear what your go-tos are.
Know what you currently do. And you can put it in the chat or talk.
Yeah, either way.
Well, maybe I'll start since no one else is
Yeah.
jumping in.
Sure.
So I had last semester, I had one student doing a research project for her capstone because she wasn't really able to come to campus because she works full time.
Mhm.
And so she did a research project, and she was under the impression that none of the uh, sources that she wanted to look into were available through the BC library. And so she also has a student uh, access through CSUB. So she was leaning on CSUB's access, and I asked her to check with the librarians to, get some help with it, but I'm not really sure she ever did that or not.
The students maybe are not aware, is what you're
Yeah.
saying, of have access to.
And I think
Yeah,
it's
maybe not aware, but I think also just convinced that, we don't have good access, so I'm not even going to try.
Mm.
That's good feedback. Okay. Yeah.
Hey everyone, Daniel here. I find that my students, especially online classes, often rely on more and more on the growing ebook collection. So I would probably start just doing some general searches there, and if it comes really up it really bare, I might kind of rethink or kind of revise the topic a little bit. Otherwise, generally the topics I've chosen, there's been plentiful ebook collection, ebook materials on its own to make it worthwhile. But that's just a place to start.
Like our star answer. We were wondering if anyone did that. So that's great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, part of the fun when we're teaching library orientations is like testing out if we were a student and doing research for whatever the research for the class is. And yeah, sometimes you have to really get creative with keywords or figure out specific databases. So we also like doing that work, but we just wanted to hear how y'all handle it too when you are prepping. Um, Anyone else want to say? If not, we can keep doing our thing and go on. Yeah, we can move on, I think. I think that's fine. So, collection development, what is that? That's a big part of what we as librarians do in addition to teaching research. So, it's identifying the materials that are relevant and appropriate for a library, and that context changes depending on the type of library, and finding titles that fit the criteria. So, this project that we are doing, we'll get into a little bit more about it, but it's involving our physical collection in particular. E-resources, whole other bag. We are interested in those, obviously, but that's not what the scope of this particular project is that we're talking about.
We're always doing collection development for every aspect of our collection, but we're
Right.
having a big project right now.
Right, yeah. This is we always do it, but this is a targeted project that we're really focusing on for the next couple of years.
I like your little curls and your little curls and your little curls. Come on, we'll give them to you.
We had them once upon a time.
Okay, so sorry. What is weeding? Weeding is, gardening. And gardening, if any of you garden, it's pulling out the unwanted stuff, right? So it's deselecting titles from the collection, but not just willy-nilly. We're not just throwing out titles and having sort of a bonfire in the back of the library. We are having a set criteria that we follow and guidelines that we adhere to. And we wanted to ask before we tell you maybe why you should care. We want to see if you might have some input yourselves. Why do you think, as faculty in other disciplines, you might have a vested interest in this project? Or even why are you here today, I guess, also.
Student success.
Say more, John.
I mean, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, we want our students to succeed. I mean, for me, besides the paychecks, that's the most gratifying part of my job is knowing and hearing of student success. When my students go out in the field and get good jobs and make a good career, move on. And what's really the best part is, when I bump into them somewhere in public, maybe a couple of years later, and they come running up to me and thanking me and, you know, telling me, all the things that they've accomplished, buying houses and getting married and things like that. So it's fun. I love it. That's what I really love about my job.
Nice.
Me too.
Yeah, having, right, student success, which is tied to having resources that we are helping to provide, right? Supplemental for their research, but also because we're a community college. John, you kind of touched on it. I mean, also their lives, right? So we're in a interesting place where, public libraries focus more on popular and sort of getting those things out. Academic focuses on just the research. We are an academic library, but we're also a community college. So we're in that interesting gray area between, I think, public and academic, where we want both of those things. We want life books, we want popular books, but primarily we want, research materials that can supplement what they're learning in their courses. So that's great. Faith, you want to take it away and talk about the project?
Project? Yeah. So before I get into what we are doing, I just wanted to talk about why we're doing it. So just taking a look at what our physical collection currently looks like. I don't know how many of y'all have been in our stacks recently or taken a look on OneSearch to see what we have available physically, but I just have a few stats I wanted to show you. So we have about 80,000 volumes, which translates to right around 71,000 titles. And if you want to know the difference between those two, I can tell you. So of our 71,000 individual titles, 2,819 titles circulated in 23 to 24. So that is about 4% of our collection, which is maybe not like what I would like to see. So for example, and I think shout out to Sam who's in this. Sam is our library technician out at Shafter. And shout out to Ariel, who really has done a lot in Shafter. 53% of our collection in Shafter, which is a public library, has circulated in the past year. So at a public library, you might be seeing over 50% of the collection circulating every year. We're an academic library, so we're not probably going to see the same amount of circulation that a public library would. But I think, it would be nice to see more than 4% of our collection circulating every year. And 538 titles circulated 3 or more times in the past 4 years, which is less than 1% of the collection is circulating multiple times in a certain amount of years. So that's also a bit of a bummer to me. And then we might want to look and see why that's the case. And that's a great question, Neil. So yes, we definitely had higher circulation back, I think, when I first started in 2015, and from what I hear from previous librarians, we definitely had higher circulation before that. So online resources have definitely changed the game for sure. But if you take a look, one reason I think our circulation is not that high is because 47% of our physical collection was published before 1980. And if you know anything about like evaluating resources, we tend to tell students to be cautious of stuff that was published, more than 5 years ago. And books are a little different, right? But students are probably not going to be very interested in looking at books that are 45 years old. It's not uncommon for me to do a search in our catalog and see that all of the books on a particular topic are from the 1950s, which might be interesting from a historiography like perspective, but not necessarily for a freshman and sophomore students who need up-to-date resources on a particular topic. And then sadly, 89% of our collection was published before 2010. So pretty rough if you think about what we have and what is usable, right? So if students are looking for recent resources, and I mean, at this point, 2010 was 15 years ago, right? So even that's pretty old. There's only 11% of our collection that's, I would consider pretty usable, right? So 11% of 80,000 is what, a little over 8,000 books, maybe 9,000 books. So that's what I'm considering kind of our usable collection. So then if you look at our 2,800 circs, that's maybe a little better, right? If you think about it in that context. But this leads us to what we're doing about this, right? And I wanted to point out before you go, wow, our library is the worst library in the world, because I was feeling that a little bit, like how could we have such a bad collection? I'm talking to so many libraries in the state, and they're all either where we're at or their stuff is even older than ours. So I don't think this is necessarily specific to BC, but this is something I think the current generation of librarians is really focusing on, at least in California, and I think across the nation. So what we're doing is we are going to take an aggressive approach both to deselection, so that weeding that Ariel mentioned, and selection. So we are trying really hard to add really good new titles to our collection, really hard over the next few years, and I mean always ongoing. But so what we're going to do is a huge weed, basically. Normally, weeding is a process that, is kind of ongoing, and you do sections. Every 5 years, you might look at a certain section. But right now, I don't think any weeding's been done in the past 30 years from really what I've been told, and I'm not sure about before that. So we are going to really be taking a look at our entire collection and seeing what we want to keep and see what we end up with, and then how we can add to it from there. And then also what comes with selection, we'll talk about this more later on, is that we have many new sites. So there's Delano, which is, our most established site. No, Arena, these stats do not include the e-versions. This is just our physical collections. So our e-resources are doing just fine. We are having tons of circulation and use of those. We also have Delano, we have Southwest, which opened a year ago, and then we have Arvin, which is opening now. So all of those sites are going to need their own collections and their own resources, and so those are all starting from scratch. So they will have newer stuff in them just because they are starting from scratch. So here's kind of what we're taking a look at as we're reviewing all of our titles, and we really are reviewing almost all of our titles. We're looking at all of our titles that were published more than 10 years ago, which is most of them. So yeah, we're looking at almost all of our titles. We're also looking at the titles that have not circulated in the past 5 years, which again is almost all of them, and that fit something called the musty criteria. If y'all are interested, we can share these slides afterwards, and there's a link to what that what this means, but this is a pretty common criteria that libraries use. And musty stands for misleading, ugly, superseded, trivial, irrelevant, and elsewhere, to kind of just ways to help you think about the physical condition of a book, and also, is it useful for a particular collection or not? Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, I have one, Faith.
Yeah.
How, I agree with getting rid of all the old stuff, but there's probably a lot of seminal works buried in there, and how do you keep
That's a great question.
the good
We're
We'll
going to
get
get into that.
we'll get there. It's a
Okay.
good question. We'll get there.
Yeah. Okay, so Ariel, I think this is you.
Yes. So obviously with a project of this magnitude, we are setting some goals for what we are trying to accomplish. A project like this is, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, it's a big project, but it's also a sensitive project, which I like that Paul sort of brought up, something we will get into in a little bit. It's a sensitive project because people are very protective over books, right? Conceptually, but just, also like, so when people get rid of books, it is a fraught topic. So we want to make sure we are keeping everyone in the know. We have this slide deck if we need to share it out with anyone or give another presentation on it, right? Like we want everyone, the whole campus community to know and like understand sort of why we're doing this. Our goals are we want a usable collection. So it happens not infrequently. At the reference desk, a student will come up and they need help. One of the things when we're conducting a reference interview is we ask, do you prefer physical resources or e-resources? A lot of students prefer physical. We have returning students who are already nervous about technology, and it's already a huge leap to go back to school if you've been out of the game for a while. And or we have younger students as well that just they want a physical book. A lot of younger generations are sort of returning to the analog and the physical when it comes to collections in general. Not just books, but also like records, VHS tapes, things like that. So people want them, which is part of the reason why we want the vibrancy of our physical collection to match our e-resources. Currently, when people ask us at the desk for physical, we try to accommodate, but as Faith pointed out, a lot of that stuff is too old to be usable for them depending on their discipline. So we want it to be not just new. That's the thing. We want new, but we also want, as Paul pointed out, seminal works, things that have stayed relevant and good. Neil asks, I'm kind of fascinated with the idea of how outdated, misleading early research evolves over time. Do you have thoughts about how students might access, locate those types of things? That's a good question, Neil. I mean, that's part of what we want to do, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but why we want to keep some of those works that are important and seminal, and even if they might be technically outdated, right? If a piece is interesting contextually and has resonated over time, that's something we want to keep. There's a lot of titles. I mean, like we've started doing some of this work now, and I'm in charge of the R's, which is medicine. And as you can imagine, stuff from the 30s might not be very usable right now, but part of the research is going through and looking at a lot of those individual titles and looking up current scholarship on those titles. So sometimes those are still big, very rarely, right? There's a lot of books that get published every single year. If you think about any, books published in a given year, how many of those have staying power, whether through popular reading or academic research? It's very few. It's a very small percentage. We would still have, the goal is to still have some of that stuff, Neil, and then also as librarians, we are looking at what we have in our databases and collections, but we are also extensively looking at and have search tools to find stuff online. So beyond what we have in our databases. So that's one way I would sort of deal with that question. And then again, we want stuff that's appropriate for the audience. So that linked there is the conspectus levels, which is used for academic libraries, not public libraries. And this is very helpful because then we can look at the scope of a collection and the scope of even section by section what we're doing. It goes from 0 to 5, and 5 is we keep every single little thing, like that's more like almost archive work, comprehensive everything. Faith, remind me, most of our stuff fits more in like a 3.
We kind of stop with the community college library. We kind of stop at the beginning of level 3, which is the study or instructional support level.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of in and this is it's split into a few things. So we're kind of in the 3A and 3B would be the extent of kind of where we stop as a community college library. If you think about like CSUB or a university, they're going to have students who are upper graduates and who are graduate students, right? And so they are going to be at more of that research level. And like Ariel said, 5 is pretty like archival, like probably more of like a research one university would be developing to a level 5.
Yeah. So that helps us make some of these decisions as well, is understanding the context and scope of our overall collections. And then Faith, I'll pass it to you because we need y'all's help, and so you can
Yeah,
maybe tell
we
us
need your
how.
help. Yeah, and thank you, Paul, for letting us tee off.
Yeah,
There is
oh,
a case study I guess we should mention.
I forgot about this.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, do you want to say it, Ariel?
Sure. So Faith and I have been doing some research because we've been curious, not just for the project, but also because, library nerds. What's the conversation around this, statewide or nationally? As Faith pointed out earlier, there does seem to be sort of like a generational shift of like this generation of librarians is very concerned with collection development and updating, whereas past generations were not as much. Um, and there's probably a lot of reasons for that, different things to focus on. But a Texas Community College Library did a project very similar to what we are doing. So they updated their collection because of the age and the condition. And through it was a 3-year process, and their circulation went up 70%. From what it had of their physical books, right? And again, we're focusing on physical collection here. That's wild. I would love for that. I'd love for that to happen for us. And we linked to the study too, so you can. It's a really interesting study, and I think it has some good ideas in it for us to do. But yeah, just something to consider because I think people get scared when you get rid of titles. It can feel like, oh, maybe why are we doing that? But it actually does bring up circulation. That's one study, but that is something that is shown time and time again. If you look at the American Library Association, they have a lot of materials for librarians to justify weeding projects. And there's a lot of data out there that suggests that circulation goes up. And when you think about it, um, if you are in a bookstore that is piled up overwhelmingly huge, or anything where you're looking through a bunch of things that aren't organized, I don't know about you, but my brain kind of shuts off. Like I need to see things like front facing books with covers. I need to be able to engage with a collection that's not overwhelming. And especially if a lot of it is stuff that I'll never use or need or want, I won't be looking at the collection in its entirety. I'll probably just leave. And I think that's what a lot of our students are doing with the physical collection.
And if you think about it, like these books that are 45 years old or more are really in bad condition. Like we're not an archive, so we're not keeping things in archival condition. So that you go out there and the pages are crumbling and the spines are cracked, and it's just not very usable at that point. So I'll get into where you come in, which is what we're doing is we're kind of taking a look and using our own expertise to review lists of titles. So we take a look, we have those criteria that we mentioned, and so we kind of pull all of the titles in a spreadsheet that fit those criteria that we mentioned. And then, of course, we're not just automatically saying all of these are being weeded, right? We're looking through and deciding, well, I happen to know that this is seminal, like I know that this is an important topic. We don't have anything else on this topic, so let's go ahead and keep it until we can order more, maybe that's more updated, right? So we are using our own expertise as librarians to kind of winnow that list down. And then once we have done that, we are taking our list of, hey, here's titles that we think should be weeded. We are sending them to department chairs of relevant disciplines. And that is where we're asking for faculty discipline expert help. You're the ones who know more about your particular disciplines than we do, right? We're using what we know, but y'all are the ones who actually know what you're teaching in your courses, and you're the ones who know what is really seminal in your field. So we're going to be asking, and we'll have like deadlines of a month or longer. Like, no worries, this won't be like, hey, look at this long list of titles and get back to us in 2 days. We're going to be asking your chairs to send these lists out to the rest of the department and giving y'all a chance to give us feedback to say, hey, like, here's the titles that you should keep from this list, right? So you'll be looking at the list, saying, this is what we believe you should keep because it's seminal, and we'll say, great, we'll go ahead and keep that. There could be the chance that we go back and we look at those books to keep and we realize they're in terrible condition. And in that case, we would order replacement copies that are in better condition for those titles if they're older. And yeah, exactly what Sandra said. A lot of students just don't think we have new books. Like, they walk back there and they walk back out and they go, all of your books are really old and I don't want to read them, right? And so then that's sad. And Rita, we're about to get to that for sure.
We'll get to that. Um,
So with
Faith,
80,000, sorry, Ariel, I was just gonna finish a second.
oh yeah, sorry.
Um,
Yeah, go for it, go for it.
okay. So with 80,000 books to review, it'll take us a few semesters. Like Ariel mentioned in that case study that we looked at, it took them 3 years, right? So I'm anticipating it'll take us a few semesters to get through all 80,000 books with 5 full-time librarians. Um, So it'll take us a while, but we are starting, like this semester, chairs will start getting lists to share with their departments to start taking looks at. If you don't see one from your chair this semester, don't be like, wow, my chair didn't give us the list. Your chair may have not gotten it yet. So just know that it is coming. If it doesn't come immediately, don't think that you're being ignored. And we really do want your feedback. Like, this isn't just something where we're like, I guess we'll let them look at it. We really want it. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, just wondering if there's any tools out there, like artificial intelligence, where you can submit that great big list and get some recommendations on whether or not they're, definitely don't keep this book, definitely keep this one, and the rest are need review.
It's not the AI that I would trust.
I was about to say I would not trust them. Maybe you could build.
Well, maybe not AI, but maybe there are some tools out there, because there's a million libraries out there that are all facing the same dilemma, I would think.
I
Well,
think that's what makes reading so hard.
yeah, and the tools are us, is frankly what the tools are. I mean, we have to kind of go through, and I mean, like, part of what we're looking at, let me show you while we are on this. Faith, do you mind if I share my screen and just show one of the lists?
Yeah.
All right, cool. This way you can kind of get a picture. When the lists are being sent out, here's an example of the list. It's medicine, so I sent it out to relevant disciplines. This is a list that I have cleaned up, and it has titles, dates, and then whether or not you want to keep it. As you can see, we have something from 1925 about the correction of speech defects. I would hope that in the last 100 years, we have developed more medicine and science and information on that topic. I still want to check and make sure if something's seminal, but this is a list where I've already gone through several thousand titles and made calls on what I wanted to keep, and I pulled those out. So these are ones that I'm thinking, based on my research, are not seminal, and we don't need to keep. And this is before I've gone into the physical collection, because I will also be looking physically at the books, but I'm looking at the list first because that is easier to start with. And as you can see on this list of medicine titles, there's about almost 2,300. Medicine is an interesting one because it should be even more current than some of our other ones, like language and literature. That's going to be a whole different bag, right? Medicine, if you think about it, like our nursing department, they need materials to be accredited. They need stuff that's within the past 5 years. So that's like a very strict, or 5 or 3, I can't remember, but it's very.
For their accreditation, they didn't want to see titles on the shelf that were older than 3 years old.
Yeah, so very, very strict. So R is an interesting one to look at because I've actually had to be a little bit more, I've been a little bit more aggressive than you would be with some of the other Library of Congress
I'm going to
numbers.
be looking at the P's this semester, and that's related. That's literature, so that's
Yeah.
a whole different ballgame. I'll be keeping very old stuff, right?
Yeah.
So very different when you look at each discipline.
So this is what we're giving to faculty, but when we are looking at a list, I am looking at a bunch of other factors. So I'm looking at factors like I look at title, author, number of circs for like all time, number of circs past like 5 years. Um, I'm looking at a bunch of different factors because that's, in our discipline as librarians, we're considering all these things. But then also looking at online lists. If anyone on any sort of listserv has shared stuff, we already do collection development and use journals like Choice Magazine, which has reviews. But the same way, we ask students to vet sources, we're doing that. And yeah, it's hard because then sometimes you're looking at 4,000 titles. Stuff is going to fall through the cracks. I was an English major. R is not my field. So that's why I send it out, and that's why we want the experts of their field to take a look, if they want to, and hopefully they do, to give me that context that I need, because I can do some research from my field, but it's not going to be as comprehensive. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to share that.
And we know that like people feel very strongly about the idea of getting rid of books, and we will continue talking
Yeah.
about what we are doing. So don't worry. We I mean, that's a good point, your scenario, but we are trying to think specifically about what a community college library student or a community college student needs, right? So we have a community college library here with students who are freshman and sophomore level students. I know Paul's in the room. Paul teaches students who are bachelor level students, right? So we do know that we have a couple of baccalaureate programs. And so, of course, when it comes to those particular fields, we would be developing our collection to be a little more advanced in those specific areas. But for the most part, we're not looking at keeping a collection that is what someone getting a graduate degree in the field would need, right? Because that's just not what our students need at this point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ariel, I think you have another scenario.
Another scenario. Okay, you are a BC student attending courses at the Southwest campus. It's your first semester back at school in over a decade, and you are nervous about how prevalent technology has become. Your professor has told you that you need to use 2 books as sources in an upcoming essay, but the Southwest campus library doesn't have the titles you need. How do you get the books? Again, not a right or wrong. Just want you to consider a scenario that we see all the time at the libraries.
Most people run to Amazon.
A lot of that, if they have the money, which again, a
Right.
lot of our students don't, and they're
Right.
already spending money on textbooks, which are an arm and a leg in and of themselves.
They're probably gonna find an article, or something, and then it's not gonna be what you guys are
Hmm.
looking for.
That's a good point. They'll find something else, but it's not going to be robust research that's actually going to fit the criteria. Yeah,
Do our students have access to CSUB?
no.
So even if they're at Southwest campus, a quarter
They could
mile
get a
away?
community, like I think there's a way, but you have to pay for access.
Yeah, I was wondering because at CSUB we only had like EBSCOhost and the other databases. Is that a BC? Is that what he was saying? What Paul was saying?
We have databases,
Oh,
but
okay, but that's more.
CSUB, as Faith was pointing out, I mean, they have more funding for their databases, but it's because they're, 4-year school. So they have more robust, just like breadth of option for their databases. Students, Faith, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there is like some sort of community thing, but they do have to pay for it. Like you can't just because you're a BC student
So
roll
what you
up
do
and
if
get a
you're
book.
they can get access to the CSUB library, but they have to prove that there's no way they can get access to it at BC in general, and they have to pay $25 a year.
Oh.
And Arita, you would be surprised. There are books coming out constantly. We
There's a
have
lot.
some really awesome books that we've ordered about like AI that have came out in the past year, right? So
Yeah.
there's whatever you have as an ebook is available as a physical book for the most part, right?
For the
It's
most
just
part, yeah.
in this particular scenario, students are going to be have more success looking for books in our ebook resources. We have 200,000 ebooks. Then they're going to have success looking for our physical books at Southwest.
Right.
Public
And
library.
say again.
Public libraries, maybe?
Public libraries, I mean, potentially if, let's say, Panorama campus, we have more books, right? Southwest, I don't know if you have been there, for those of you that haven't, tiny, right? The library there, very tiny. We're just starting to develop it, but it's not going to ever be 80,000 volume or, 80,000 volumes like we have here at Panorama. So potentially maybe they could go there, but, a lot of our students struggle with transportation. So how are they getting to that campus? Things to think about when we are developing, or if we are bringing a book from one campus to another, it's the intrepid librarians that are schlepping it. It's like, shout out to Elizabeth Delano, librarian. She's the one driving to a different campus, just out of the goodness of her own heart, because we don't have a system, like a courier
There's
system
no
between our
intercampus
campuses.
system right now, and so there's no way for us to send books like from the main campus to any other campus, or from any other campus to the main campus, without librarians using personal time and personal vehicles to transport them. So that's a big bummer.
Yeah. Yeah. So just those are things that we have to consider when we are developing collections, that it's not just a breadth of collection on all the campuses. It's also focusing on each campus has its own flavor, has its own needs. And, if something is a big title, we might want it at multiple campuses, because then a student can get it right then when they need it and not have to worry about one of us driving it over. So this is me, right? I'm supposed to be talking about this,
I
Faith?
think so.
Okay, great. The other ways we're looking for help beyond you looking at the lists that we're going to be sending to departments, we want to know from you, like, and this could be anything. This could be like you're reading a magazine and you're like, this title looks cool. Just shoot us an email. We love to get emails from faculty. We get a lot of faculty requests, and we'll order those books and we'll let you know when they come in. So think of us when you're hearing titles that you think, hey, you guys should have this, right? We love that. We get excited when you do that. And in fact, sometimes with faculty I know, when I'm looking through Choice Magazine, I'll like take a screenshot of one of the reviews and send it to a faculty in that discipline and say, hey, should we get this? And sometimes they say no, but there's another title you should get, it just depends. And I default to them because it's their discipline. We have a collection development policy on our website, and it lays out exactly what we are looking for. This is publicly available. You can read through it and check if you're curious. If you're not that type of person, then just send us titles. You don't have to read through and do all your homework here. You can still send us the titles, but we just wanted to let you know that is available publicly, so you can see how we develop and how we order, and also how we weed.
You also don't have to send us titles if that's too overwhelming. You can say, hey, my students need to research this topic and I notice you don't have a ton on it. And
Yeah.
then that's our job to figure out titles too.
That's
So
true.
we can
Yeah.
do that.
How frequently do you order books? Is it like once a year or just whenever you
All the
need?
time.
Like throughout the semester,
All the
they are
time.
being ordered. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like our library technician who orders books just placed an order for 1,000 books right now, like yesterday.
Yeah. So we look at those publications that give reviews. Choice is the big one because it's specifically for colleges, and they have, usually sections that'll have for community college specifically. We're reading those reviews, and we, like to order after that. I feel like sometimes we fight over who gets that magazine first, because because we'll circle in there an initial for, oh, I already want this and I already ordered it. And the first person usually gets all the good titles before before the rest of us go in. But yeah, we constantly do it. I mean, since I've already gone through the R's and looked at the medicine titles, I've also noticed, okay, that's been me wanting to get rid of, and we haven't yet weeded, but I have a list of what I'm planning on weeding. But I've also ordered quite a bit of new books for that section. Because of the weeding, it allows me to go in and see, hey, what am I getting rid of? And do I need to supplement that with more current titles? Or do we already have those more current titles, but they haven't got eyes on them? Because as Sandra pointed out, the collection looks old, and so these books are not getting their due.
And you might also want to see, like, every pathway has a librarian assigned to it. Your pathway may not be using the librarian very much, but there is a librarian assigned to your pathway, and so that person is thinking about your pathway and thinking about what books would be useful for that pathway. And so you can always reach out to that librarian and say, hey, this course is really not supported in your collection, and how can we get this course more supported in our collection? Okay,
How do we find out who our librarian is?
that's a great question. Let me look up while Ariel talks about this slide. Let me look up
Yeah.
the pathway page.
Okay. Um, so some of you have already asked this, and now we're finally getting to it. So what are you doing with these books? If they are probably like really gross, we got to get rid of them, right? And unfortunately, the library, every rainy season, the roof leaks. I don't know why they have not fixed it appropriately. They tell us they have, but it leaks every single time. So, some of these books have water damage, and some of it's very old water damage. Some of those things we got to get rid of. But we don't want to get rid of, you know what I mean? We want them to go to a good home. So one thing that we had the idea to do is kind of like scholastic book fairs, you know, back in the day when you were in elementary school. We want to do that for faculty. So we want to have faculty book fairs. The idea right now is to do it by department, and let folks come out and browse what we're getting rid of, and just take some, you know, like just have some fun, do some shopping, get some of those books. So that's one of the things we want to do. We also want to work with prison libraries and have them come out and take some of these books. There's a whole bunch of restrictions on what they can and can't have, but you know, they can decide that for themselves. They can go through the titles and they can take what they need and what would be useful, because prison libraries are always needing materials. You know, and some of our stuff, they might not want a book from 1925, but we have plenty of books that are newer than that. And then public library friend groups. So we've already reached out to the Tehachapi Friends. They're a very robust friend group. If you're not familiar with library friend groups, they're nonprofit volunteer group of folks who, you know, raise funds for the public library. So they do book sales and that sort of thing, and it funds different things. So we want to make sure we involve them too, because some of these books, you know, probably would be great. I mean, people love buying vintage books, so we'd be able to fund and contribute to them in that way. Chris mentioned digitizing. Yeah, we would need a machine to do it. We'd need a dedicated staff to do it, and digitizing books is a copyright issue. I don't know how we would actually make that publicly available. That's more like an archive thing, and again, as Faith pointed out, we do not have at all the resources to do that. And even if we did, which, yeah, I don't know if we'd be allowed to even show those, like, copyright wise. Yeah, so these are all the things that we are already planning on doing. If you have other ideas, you know, hit us up at any time, because we don't want these books to get thrown out. Like, that's last resort. That's after we've done all these other things.
And the book fairs I'm very excited about, because our plan is to kind of have it be a 2-day process, and the first day is like a preview just for the faculty, like maybe in that department, who's related to that discipline, to come by and take a look, and then after that it's just open to anyone who wants to come and take a look at some books that they could take home with them. And some of them are pretty cool. It's just they are maybe not super useful for our students anymore, but if you're someone who has a master's or PhD in the topic, you're like, oh, this is pretty cool, I want to take it home with me.
There's a lot of those, yeah. And a lot of just, like, if you love vintage books in general, I mean, some of them are stamped. They're so old that they're stamped with the Kern County Union High School District, you know, way back in the day.
From the 50s, yeah.
Beyond, yeah, from like the 20s, the 30s. It's wild. So very, very fun.
Are there any encyclopedia collections, antique ones?
That's going to be our first book fair. I've been going through the reference collection, and yes, there will be. Yeah, there'll be some cool stuff in there. So I just wanted to kind of close out our our time here with just thinking about what y'all could, just some considerations for us to either chat through or put in the actual chat, um, just so y'all can think, as you think about how you can contribute to this project and be involved in this project. Because again, this isn't something we want to do by ourselves siloed off. We want to have your participation and involvement, so you feel like you are involved in our collection and it's for you, right? And for your students, and not just something we're creating without any input from you. Are there any, just off the top of your head, any topics or aspects of your courses that students struggle with that we could better support in our collection that you know of? IEE, could you tell me what that means, Arena? John, I saw you on mute. I didn't know if you wanted to chat.
Yeah, actually, I have a question, or I need guidance actually.
Yeah.
I have about a dozen textbooks that I think would definitely serve a better purpose as reference material in the library. I've got it, like I said, I got about a dozen copies, and they came to me because they were books that were bought for the students at the Crossroads Youth Facility. Try to make this story short, but fall of last year, the HVAC program was offered at the Crossroads Youth Facility through the Rising Scholars Program. It only lasted one semester because of money. In the end, the money wasn't there to buy everything we needed to get to have on hand. And so I got about a dozen copies of the textbook that, I'd like to be able to just put in the Delano campus, the main campus, and maybe Shafter, uh, for the students to be able to get their hands on, especially in the beginning when, those first few weeks when they're waiting for their book or they're waiting for a paycheck or whatever, they could at least be doing some
Yeah,
work.
John,
But
are these
go
are
ahead.
current textbooks, right?
Yeah, actually, the 10th edition is getting ready to come out, I think sometime during the middle of this semester. So I'll probably be adopting that in the fall, but the current edition is definitely acceptable for the work, and the assignments they need to do.
Yeah,
Cool.
that sounds like a perfect fit for our reserve collection. We have textbook reserve collections at all of our campuses. So if you come to the any of the libraries and ask to put those books on reserve for students, so that would mean Delano, Southwest, Arvin now, we're opening in Arvin,
Wow.
and Panorama, you can put copies of textbook on reserve. So yes, if you come do that, we'd be happy to do that for you.
Okay. Could I just bring all of them to the, main campus library, and you guys can distribute them
Sure,
as
yeah, if you tell
fit?
us, we can figure it out, yeah.
Okay.
John, I think we have your book in Delano on reserve, and it does get used frequently. So if you want to put more copies, that'd be great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so John, just take it to the circulation desk on the first floor. They're in charge of those, and so they can get you sorted.
In the main campus, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
on the main campus,
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
But you could, if you go to Delano, you can take it directly to Elizabeth as well.
Okay.
Can he, is that how that works, Elizabeth? Am I misspeaking?
What's that?
Can he take it to you, or does he need to take it to main campus first?
No. He can take it to my desk and
Okay,
I'll
that's
process
what I
it there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
I see that Neil has a question about interlibrary loan. I'm glad someone brought it up. Faith can probably speak more on it. Interlibrary loan is very expensive. That's my understanding of why we don't do it.
We don't have a budget for us. They have not given us a budget for it.
Yeah.
So we are not able to offer it because it would cost students to participate in it. They'd have to pay. Also, I just thinking about how to politely say this. It's my understanding that it's difficult to do interlibrary loan as a community college. It's hard to
Yeah.
participate in some of the larger consortiums for interlibrary loan because universities thinks that we don't have anything to offer them and that they would only be giving to us. And so
Yeah.
they aren't interested in letting us enter into agreements with them for interlibrary loan, unfortunately.
Yep.
Yeah, great question. I wish we could have interlibrary loan because it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is just a consideration that you could think of. If we just want to do general Q&A about what we're talking about right now, that's fine too. But we've been trying to figure out how to ask folks to think about titles. Normally when we say, hey, what are some titles that would be useful for your students to have access to? Everyone's brain goes to textbooks, right? They think, here's the textbooks that would be awesome. We don't buy textbooks. Textbooks are very expensive and they are outdated after about a year. And so we'd be constantly replacing them, right? So, and most of them, like, so many of them come with a code, right? And the code only works for
Yeah.
one person, right? So then it's a whole thing there. So the only textbooks we have access to are textbooks that someone like John has donated to our reserve textbook collection.
Well, and publishers
which
don't want us to, publishers don't want us to collect them. They want students to buy them. So there's some things that are, we are restricted, I think, in some ways from even if we had the money, we can't.
Yeah. So what we've been thinking about is we're just trying to have y'all think about like interesting, relevant, seminal titles in the field that would be useful for students to use as they research for topics related to your courses, right? So one way that we've found it helpful to talk to faculty about this is to just say, when you go to a bookstore and you look at books about your field, what you teach about, what are some titles that you gravitate toward, whether that you would gravitate towards, you have gravitated towards, those might be some good ones to suggest if you're interested in thinking, what are some titles I could suggest, right? And if you have any, feel free to stick them in the chat and we can literally order them today.
Yeah.
And if you're curious if we have a particular book, let me show y'all how you can check if we have a book. Has everyone been to OneSearch before? Maybe. I'm going to show y'all a couple of resources really quick. So if you go to OneSearch, which is under our research button on the library website, this is where you can search for anything that we have access to, whether it's an article or a book. You would just type the title. So I can type I hope I spelled sorcerer right. Okay, so I can search for the title as a book, and then if it comes up, here we go, it tells me that it is available and that I can access it. Delano has a copy and we have 2 copies at the main campus library.
Hey,
So you
Faith,
can check and see. Go ahead,
if you
Karen.
want to check for the IEEE while you're on OneSearch, that might be nice too.
Yes, I was trying to see if that was an actual name of a,
I know, of a journal or of a database. That's what I'm trying to figure out too.
I think it's for a database.
That's what I think, yeah. In
So
which case we
Irina,
don't have that.
we don't have it, no, but let me show you what we do have. So if anyone's also curious about what access we have to a particular genre of articles specifically, since that was articles, does everyone know how to get to, I just went through that really fast. Under research, if you go to find all of our databases with A to Z databases, I'm going to show you, if you limit your vendors option to libkey, and I'll put the individual links in the chat right now. This journal browse is really nice. You can actually look and browse all of our online resources by discipline. Sorry, there's the word. So let's see. Let's try, she said engineering, right? Let's try engineering. And then it kind of shows me all the different titles all the different journals that we have, or subjects. That's a subject, it looks like, and the rest are titles. And then if I was interested in this particular This one, Chemical and Biochemical Engineering Quarterly, it would take me and let me figure out how to actually read the article and get to there as well. So that'll take me right to it. So that's a nice way to browse, or you can search directly in OneSearch as well if you know exactly what you're looking for. All right, a little bit off topic, but I just wanted to make sure y'all knew.
No, that's good. I think that's good to show.
Any other questions? We're about up with our time here.
Thanks for coming, y'all. Please,
Yeah.
please tell your colleagues, sorry, comrades was coming to my head. Tell them that this is happening. Let them know that we want you all involved. We don't want this to be a surprise. We want this to be a collaborative project where we're doing the work, but we want you involved in your input. So spread
And
the
this is
word.
something we're excited about. It's going to make our library really cool. Like, this isn't
Yeah.
something we're like, wow, we suck. This is terrible. I know we gave you some data that was a little discouraging, but we are genuinely excited about this project.
Yeah, and I think it's good to start from a realistic look at the data, and it's okay to be discouraged by it because it's gonna get better, it's gonna improve. Like it's gonna be rad. It'll look really good when we're done.
I believe my degree was in English originally.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, when you're asking all these questions about, resources and I'm just like, I don't know, I do welding now. My flux brain. No, I want to be like that again. So that's really cool that you guys are, you know, crunching down and kind of like Irina says, like book burning. The new
No book burning, don't
yeah,
worry.
I know it's a
Not banning
condensing.
anything.
It's a condensing of information and making resources readily available to electronic fingertips. It's a new
Thank you. I like that.
culture, basically, I'm realizing out here. And, I would want my welding students to do like a research or something like that, but Jesus Christ, I'm lucky they can read. And,
Yeah, I get
it's like
you.
righty tighty, lefty loosey. I have to teach that every semester, and it boggles my mind. So
Yeah,
I
I
would
think
not
that every
expect them
time
to
I'm
write a
unscrewing something.
Me
So I'm not
too.
expecting them to write a research paper with annotated bibliographies and citations, unfortunately. But I have a question that's irrelevant or not really pertains to the information, but it's up to us, the instructor, to gain another book, right, from the editors.
Oh yeah, if you want a free copy,
Yeah, I have to
whatever book
outreach to
yes.
them personally.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, because I did find a few and I put some in Delano, but I need to get a blueprint reading book for Delano and for the Southwest. So I'm gonna
Nice.
put those emails through
Cool.
this week and make sure by the time those
Perfect.
classes.
Yeah, and Kristen, our welding stuff is so old. I was looking, it's like from the 40s. So if you have it, if you know, and I know it's hard with like CTE, like
Yeah.
what they want to read for like for general edification about the topic, but if you have any idea, let me know.
Yeah, I do have an idea, and the book that we have now is basically I call their Bible. They're going to utilize it for all 30 or 60 units, basically 30
Mhm.
units. But we do have the opportunity I tell them about, which is the certified welding inspector. But that would be a whole nother training, and that textbook itself, they make it expensive specifically for people who are trying to train in that. And it's like over $2,000, and they make the test very hard intentionally because
Wow.
that's the only source of income that they're
Wow.
getting from those opportunities. So,
Wow.
I've been in this education and loopholes my whole existence. So I know it's just a matter of doing the dance and making sure all our resources are available for our students so we could get that dance as easily done as possible.
For sure.
Thank you guys.
Well,
I appreciate that.
Thanks for
yeah, thank
coming.
you all for coming. I appreciate y'all, and I appreciate you being so
Into it.
interactive, participatory.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye,
Bye,
Sam.
Sam.
Great.
Yeah, I guess as well as it could have. I knew that they would have pushback, but they were like wild. So that was a good practice.
That was a good practice. And these are people that I think are like care. And I think we actually won them. You know
I
what I
hope
mean?
we did. Yeah.
I think everything they asked, we either were like, we are doing that, or this is why we can't, you know?
Yeah. I know it's so funny, like how some people think of libraries, like when they're like, you could just digitize all the books. I'm like, and who would look at it? No one's looking at it now.
Well, yeah, I know. Like, you want me to spend, God, for one book, like the cost of digitizing has got to be, I don't know, we'd have to hire, probably like, what is it that, what experts or whatever that thing is, it's easy to hire. And then the
Yeah, you have
hours,
to hire staff to do it. And then also, so like digitizing textbooks is something you can do in Alma D. It's like a module you can add to Alma. I have not pursued it at all because I'm completely uninterested because of the sheer amount of work that it would take to do. But it's
God,
also, like you said, a huge copyright thing. Like there's a whole thing, and so only one person at a time can check it out. Like it's a whole
no.
no.
It's not, and that would be for textbooks, which actually would have
Yeah.
some value, as opposed
Yeah,
to
textbooks, I think they would get used,
a
like
book
that
from
would actually get used.
1925. Yeah.
So funny. So, okay. And I knew they would freak out if they weren't, like with Chris being like, well, it's an English B1A class and I don't, and I'm like, I know, but
For which one?
his topic, he's teaching an English B1A and his topic is about like music and uh violence against like cop violence against Black people.
Well, yeah,
Um,
and I saw that, and it's like, well, we're gonna have new stuff on that, Chris. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna have new stuff, Chris. It's okay.
It's also, maybe I should have mentioned that anything that was purchased recently, because I think he's done a lot of ordering. So I think anything that we've like we're not throwing away his stuff.
No, no, not at all. So, but I get it. I mean, that's why we're doing this. I really think that we are gonna have to do this again. We're gonna have to give
I
this
think
again.
we need to. Like, I think we need to maybe go to Senate. Like, I might ask about that.
I think so because it's annoying that they didn't let you do it for FCDC. But I would, yeah, if we can push to do it somewhere, I think we're gonna have to because I think we have to have these conversations so that people don't freak out.
We're gonna have to figure out how to do this in 10 minutes, at 10 to 15 minutes at Senate.
We could do that easily
Yeah.
because we kind of padded it, you know?
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
we can take out all the padding.
I'm gonna put on my list for next week to ask for us to go up to Senate. Because I
Okay.
think you're right. Based on the amount, like, I just think people will be upset if they don't know that this is coming.
Which is funny because we are doing everything we can, but yeah, we gotta really put it out there that we did everything we could, so. And that way they know why we're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a
Put
great
that
reason.
around. Yeah, I think it's gonna be good. The book burning I was like, oh, I hate her. And then she couldn't understand. I think one thing we have to think about as we're talking about this is the physical. Like it was so hard for them to think about the physical.
It
And so
was.
maybe we need a slide in there about our e-resources and a slide to be like, we're doing good.
Okay, yeah,
It's
that's a
not,
good idea.
you know what I mean?
I think that we could, if we do get to do it for Senate, I think we should include that and say, look, this is doing great. It's just that
Yeah, like that's
we
not
need
what
our
we're talking about
physical
right
to
now.
be as useful as our digital.
I think if we phrased it like that, like our digital stuff is doing really well. Here's maybe some basics, and our stats are like really, I think really fake, but they look really good. Like it shows millions of searches, which I think is fake.
They're
Um,
really fake. And it's not our fault. We're not the ones
not our fault.
lying
It's the
or
software's
whatever.
fault. Yeah.
No. Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds good. I think that would be useful and we can take a look and chunk it in a way that I think it'll be
Yeah.
easy to tighten up. It'll be
Yeah, I
mostly
think
the
so.
data. It'll just be showing them the data and then talking about the goals and how we're involving people. That's it.
Yep. Okay, we can do that. I'll
Yay.
run to
Well, I think that was
DC and
positive, but
see
you're
what-
right. We were really fighting for our lives a little bit.
Yep. It was good though. It was a good practice round.
I think it was
So.
good. I think it was good. Okay, cool.
Oh, I was gonna say, would it be crazy and really annoying of me to say after you come to my house tomorrow morning, we like go out of our way and go to Arvin to look at the new library?
No, that sounds fun. Let's
Okay.
do it. I'd love to see
She's
it.
she wants me to come look at it, Isabel, the lady out there, but she's there from 7:30 to 3:30 tomorrow, and I was like, we're not gonna be.
Nah, let's do it.
Okay, so if you come over at 7, I think we can get there right at 7:30. So I'll just let her know.
Perfect. Field
Okay,
trip.
sorry, I know that adds like half an hour to our drive, but oh well.
Okay. I was looking. We still haven't. I was still trying to find if there was anything else we wanted to do. So.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
We can look more.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.